If you're chronically feeling exhausted, discouraged, self-doubt is taking over your brain, you feel like you're chronically self-sacrificing, missing out, you're not present with your kids, overwhelmed, reactive, and disconnected, you need this training. On May 18th, at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, I'm going to be providing a free training for working women who are raising children who want to stop being pulled in a million different directions. And you're ready to make your dreams a reality without feeling like you're failing as a mother. I'm going to pull back the curtains for you. I'm going to tell you like it is, and I'm also going to show you what I had to learn to feel alive and aligned. This is where I'm going to break down my balanced life framework for you, and I'm going to show you the myths, the beliefs, everything that holds women back, and why we are so brainwashed as a culture to keep women stuck, but also how to get out of it. So if you're interested in this, head on over to heatherchauvin.com/why not you. It's 100% free. Go to heatherchauvin, CHAUVIN.com/why not you. WHYNOTYOU. Why not you? You can feel energized, encouraged. You can trust yourself. You can honor how you want to feel, gain that intentional confidence, and feel aligned. heatherchauvin.com/why not you. It's a free training happening May 18th. And if you miss it, sign up anyways. We'll send you the replay.
What no one tells you about checking all of the boxes. I remember the moment well. I was driving my young kids, only 3 and 8 months at the time, to my parents' house for some much needed babysitting. The sun was strong and my mind was racing. You see, only a month or so prior, I'd experienced an extreme panic attack right out of the blue. I now understand that my nervous system, taxed from months of postpartum anxiety, breastfeeding challenges, and a broken foot on top of it all, was finally starting to begin its transcend from complete shutdown to a calmer, albeit still activated state. Life was, quote unquote, getting a bit easier, but my body and brain had yet to catch up. Something was missing, and I had no clue where to even start. Admittedly, I was in a bit of an internal frenzy. A breaking free of the dark night of my soul on one hand, and an undeterrable drive to figure out my purpose beyond mom simultaneously. Up until now, I lived what I thought was a normal, happy life. Why would I be so panicked? When I reflected back on my 34 years at the time, I had literally checked all of the boxes we typically consider important for, or at least indicative of, success and fulfillment. I had a fairly happy childhood, 2 degrees, an exciting and successful corporate career, a husband who loved me, 2 children, lots of friends, extensive travel, a healthy body, a curious mind, privilege and opportunities aplenty. So why? Why was I not happy? Why was my body in a full-on panic about how I was going to spend my time on this planet? In looking back, I totally get it. I see so clearly in hindsight the woman who was hanging on to outgrown ideals and living a life outside of herself. And not only that, I saw very similar patterns down the road in my clients as well. That drive was the moment where I decided I was going to start sharing my life journey publicly. I hadn't quite clicked into the service aspect of this message yet, but I knew I had something to say and wanted to voice the experience I'd been living for the past 3 years. I dropped off my kids and wrote a note in my iPhone with all the topics I was going to start posting about on Instagram. I began posting later that day. This opened the door to what eventually has become my true calling, the fulfillment of desires I knew I had inside me, but didn't dare whisper out loud.
Thank you. So many things. I'm like, where to start? I laugh, and I know you probably giggle too, because, or maybe not, how on the other side of all of this, you know, the judgment, the self-judgment, the cultural expectations, so many things that I want to talk about, but you talk a lot about in your story, nervous system, right? Like the nervous system versus like the intellectual box checking of how we are physically reacting to the stress response of life. And then the I should. So yeah, like what was that moment for you? Did a light bulb switch? Like what was that?
The panic attack specifically?
Or just the knowing of like, I can't keep pretending that this is what success is supposed to feel like.
Yeah, it's really interesting. The more that I've learned about the body and the nervous system in particular, the more that whole experience made sense to me. Because what I've come to understand is that when your body starts to shift from, as I said, that kind of shutdown place, you take on more memories, you take on more thoughts, and you process through that. And so you still kind of end up in between in this place of anxiety and panic because your body's now kind of getting flooded. And I think for me, it was that I was starting to more or less see the light of coming out of postpartum again and knowing we were done and having this broken foot and gearing up to the fall where my son was going to be starting preschool. And, I didn't have a small baby anymore. And so I was to that point where it's like, okay, but then what? I'm not going to go back to what I was doing because that was awful. That wasn't fulfilling me. And I mean, in my past, I had made this big leap from the corporate consulting world to stay-at-home mom. And it was just this all or nothing switch, which really put me into the deep end of motherhood, totally unprepared and not knowing what I was going to expect. And so I think it was in light of this seemingly easier period of time setting in that I just knew I needed to do something different with my life.
Yeah. I think it's the in between, right? So there's what we think we need and then what we actually need. And you hear me say this all the time, right? What we think we need and what we actually need. And what I often hear, and I'm sure you hear this too, is what people think they need, specifically women, because that's who I work with. That's who you work with. Specifically, they're like, I need to start my business. I need to make more money. I need to get my children to understand me. I need them in school. You even said that in your story. I need that. Okay, they're going to start school. They're going to, once this pandemic's over, once the season changes. And yet your nervous system, your body, your brain, like you got to do both. You have to figure out, like you got to heal yourself in order to find that sense of fulfillment and purpose. So when someone says, I want to know what my purpose is, what do you say to them?
Holy,
I know it's a loaded question.
It's a loaded question because it takes so much, I feel, intentional self-introspection and reflection to understand what our purpose is. And our purpose goes beyond things that bring us joy. It's also our strengths and where we shine and what we're good at and the soul gifts we have that only we have, and kind of combining those into a unique way of serving others or helping others, whatever that may be. And I think that ultimately our purpose is inner peace. Our purpose is to feel like, as you quote it all the time and preach, like a sustainable life, right? And so that can mean a lot of different things. Your purpose can be completely outside of a professional endeavor. I've been told, even based on my astrology, like my purpose is just to find myself. Forget the career, but I'm still really egoly attached to my career.
I love how you're like, my ego still wants to know this.
Yeah, I love the work that I do. So,
yes.
So I think it's combined, but I really think that when you talk about, the things that we think we need and what we truly need, it's learning how to trust ourselves. Mm-hmm. It's learning how to listen to that little voice that so many of us squashed so long ago and said, no, I'm not going to listen. I'm not going to look there. Mm-hmm. It's learning how to communicate differently. And I see the shift in my own life and with a lot of the people I work with, when we can start to communicate vulnerably mm-hmm. and also assertively, we see those changes in our marriages, in our parenting, in the way we relate to our own parents and other people. Mm-hmm. So a lot of the stuff that we don't know we need is just deep inner work.
Yeah. And I find it's not revealed to us until you start doing the work. Mm-hmm. Because when you are thinking about doing the work intellectually, you're like, I've read the book, I know the strategy. It's like, but now when you're doing integration, like actually physically taking action, that's where your shit comes up. And you're like, oh my gosh, I've actually been blocking purpose or that feeling of joy or whatever that is for somebody, or even going on the path of finding it, because I don't know, that it's just different for everybody.
Yeah. I think it's also kind of a mental shift out of blame, because I see that a lot, that for a long time, we stay in this place of blame, and we blame everyone else. We blame our husbands or partners. We blame our kids. We blame our pandemic circumstances. We blame. And it's only when you can get into self-responsibility that change actually happens.
Yeah. I remember when I first started my journey, one of my first mentors was a coach who was actually like marketed herself as like a life purpose coach. And she was also in branding, right? So it gets that side of the brain where you're like, I'm a business owner. But anyways, I never left that program feeling like I knew my purpose. Mm-hmm. But I can tell you right now in hindsight that my mental energy and intention and focus was like, what is my purpose? This person is going to tell me what it was. And I was very disconnected from self. I was connected from myself on a certain level, but that part of me that felt like I'm not worthy or I'm not that important. Like, who actually cares if I'm here or not? How do you get connected to that part of yourself rather than being like, what is my purpose? What is my purpose? And seeking that outside of yourself versus feeling like you're living on purpose?
I feel like when you can start to weigh more heavily on the side of joy on a daily basis, you're getting closer and you're leaning into that purpose. Because again, I think given all that goes on in our busy lives, if we can accept what's thrown at us and we can accept what is, then we're living more for just ourselves in that moment. And I think with purpose, I don't know. I'm struggling with this question.
I know. And I don't mean, I know you're struggling. I mean, it's actually not an easy answer, like a question that you could just so simply answer. Right. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what I like about asking these emotionally uncomfortable questions, because everyone has a different definition or a different answer. And to articulate it is almost like it's our own journey through it. Mm-hmm. I want to go back to the panic attack moment.
Sure.
I've heard this from multiple people. Not that a panic attack was, I don't want to say your cancer moment. By no means am I saying that. But there's multiple people that I have had interactions with that like it was a panic attack that was almost like the slap upside the head that got their attention. What do you physically think that your body was actually saying to you?
I get goosebumps when you say this. So totally confirmed. You're on the right track. I've always called it my spiritual awakening, because it's like the universe shook me by my shoulders and said, stop. And what physically happened to me was, I remember I woke up, it was a Sunday morning, and part of this was my husband and I had gone to a wedding the night before as a couple. And it was the first time we'd had that time together in a long time. So I was feeling really good. I was feeling happy again. And so I was really surprised that this happened. But again, it happened for this divine reason where I had this moment of joy. And then I woke up the next day and I just felt different. My body was tingling. I had all these pins and needles and I really couldn't seem to catch my breath in a way. And so I remember having a shower to kind of like try to ground and wash it off. And I lay down on my bed, and I was unclothed at this point, so I could physically see what was happening. And my diaphragm just caved in. All the air left my body. My hands closed, my cheeks sucked in, and I watched the breath be taken from me. And it was like the most shocking and wake up moment I've ever had, where I said, it was from that point on, I was there for people who have felt breathless in their bodies. Like, that was the real takeaway for me. And it was from then on, it was like, I'm getting into therapy. I'm pursuing this coaching idea I have. I'm journaling every day. I'm just saying no to things. I'm standing up for myself. It shifted so much inside me that I didn't know I even needed to change. Mm-hmm. And I've never been the same.
Oh, why? I'm always like, why do we need these moments? But that's the beauty of contrast. It's whether we choose to listen or not. I'm curious, because of that moment, do you have a different relationship with your body now when it's sending you signs, symptoms, stress responses?
I think so, for sure. Because from that point on, I went through a period after that panic attack where I was dealing with a lot of anxiety, physical anxiety symptoms that I don't know that I clued into before. And so I had this whole new level of awareness that this doesn't feel good. This is making me feel gross. Whether it's, I need to cut this out of my diet. I need to, move my body differently than I've been doing, or more at that point. In general, I feel that it really did. And I would say that I didn't think I struggled in terms of connection to my body, but I think it offered a definite chance to level up that relationship and really work through healing some of the things that I had been dealing with. And then from that point on, also paying attention to, okay, now's the time I need to go and start back pelvic floor physio, like remaking commitments to myself to help heal various aspects of my body that weren't where I wanted them to be.
Yeah. I can see it as like a body tantrum, right? Like, whether it's our children having emotional tantrums, ourselves, but it's like, I can't handle this. And when we use the word anxiety, it feels a lot different, like anxiety, depression. I was going to say overwhelm, but let's say anxiety, depression are very triggering words for some people. Like if I say guilt or overwhelm, people are like, oh yeah, I'm overwhelmed, or I feel guilty. But anxiety, anxiety, what the hell did I say? Anxiety, depression. And shame, I feel like have a bigger triggers because they are attached a lot to the medical model. And it's like, you can't go there, especially the word depression. Like you cannot go there. And it's not about the conversation of, is this a medical issue? It's more of like taking your power back of your emotional state. So I'm curious, like, what that brings up. We interrupt today's amazing podcast to bring you our sponsor, AG1. If you haven't heard me talk about AG1 previously, maybe you're going to like it as much as I do. I've been using AG1 supplement for about 2 months now. I gave up coffee a few months ago and I jumped right into AG1. I will tell you, I've slowly started integrating coffee back into my day. But what I love about AG1 is I already drink water as soon as I wake up in the morning. So now all I do is I put a scoop of this stuff inside of my water, and it's green and it has it's like a nice tropical flavor. It's not overpowering though. And so it's something that I've already been doing, which is drinking water. So it's just like habit stacking, adding another little action into my morning routine, because I am the absolute worst when it comes to taking my daily supplements. And the best part is, now that my kids see me doing this, they have started integrating that into their morning routine as well. Also, Athletic Greens is a climate neutral certified company. In 2020, AG purchased carbon credits that supports projects protecting the rainforest. And right now, it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition. It's just one scoop in a cup of water every morning. That's it. No need for a million different pills and supplements to look out for your health. And to make it super easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is go visit athleticgreens.com/EU for emotionally uncomfortable. That's athleticgreens.com/EU. Athletic, ATHLETIC greens.com/EU to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance.
Like versus like what I guess what I'm trying to say is like when you go, because I could just see my old self when I had anxiety, when I had all of these things, and I still have them. But when I had them and I felt out of control, I would go seek professional help. And then somebody else is saying, this is what's wrong with you. Take this, go do this. Again, I was still disconnected from self.
Yeah. I think that too, you brought it up, shame. Shame is what breeds anxiety and depression. So at the root of it, shame is what you often need to look at. And that's not the first place you're going to go. That's for sure. It takes a lot of healing, I think, to get to a point where you're ready to look at the shame that you carry, which is imprinted into us before we have a chance to even say we want it or not. So
before we can even speak.
Right, exactly. And so for me, it wasn't, I think my emotional journey through that was not so much based around labels. And I was, as I said, working with a therapist in CBT specifically, but I also went for Reiki. I went for birth trauma discussions. I went through shamanic healing. I took a very holistic approach to that because anxiety is a symptom of a bigger issue. It's not important of just diagnose it and that's what it is. And okay, now just go do your breathing and meditate.
Exactly.
Take your meds.
Just drink your...
Not how I wanted to.
Yeah. It's one or the other, right? It's not like just take your meds, and it's also not like just drink your green juice and you'll be fine.
Right.
It's like, let's look at both. And there's layers and levels and phases as well. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about the work that you do. Mm-hmm. So let's talk a little bit about the work that you do and how your personal experience has kind of cultivated the impact that you're making right now.
Great. So as I said, my whole push after that was to show up for people who felt breathless in their body. And that's kind of where I started. And of course, because of the journey I'd been on for the last few years, my heart was really in service of other moms. And so I decided to go back for a coaching certification and, began working with other moms who just felt, and it was again, like giving them what they thought they wanted, but giving them what they needed, which was emotional healing tools and mindfulness-based practices and more introspection. And so I call my body of work self-reclamation because it really is that journey back home to self. And so with that, I work with people in both a group and one-to-one capacity. And it can vary what kind of work we do because, as you know, it can be as small as daily habits that make a huge difference in someone's life, or it can be as big as leaving a relationship, quitting a job, starting from scratch, something totally unknown. Mm-hmm. So that's where I've been focused for the last little while. And I'm excited because I'm going to be transitioning slightly, but I still will always have room and space for people outside of business and professional endeavors. But I am trying to combine the journey of self-reclamation with purpose, as we've discussed, and really help women establish their own lines of income, their own ways of offering their service or message out into the world, taking that journey of self and transitioning it into something that helps other people.
Yeah. I think when we do it from a place of integrity, right? I think a lot of people feel like they're not qualified, but you by no means need to feel like you're curing anything. No one should ever give you that guarantee, but it's really about just being 2 steps ahead of somebody and saying, like, I have life experience and this is what I have done professionally, and just supporting other people. Like, there's so much value in sharing resources and stories that, like you said, it's like that moment you were like, I'm done with this. I'm done feeling like this. I'm waking up. I'm taking action. It's definitely not a linear journey. Mm-hmm. And then you figure shit out as you go.
Yeah.
So I want to pull back the curtains a little bit, because you've been in my world for a little while. You're like, shit, man, what's she going to ask me? The journey that people think they're taking versus the journey that they are actually taking. Because I would say you are someone who is a leader in the space of practicing what you preach. And those types of people are different than the person who's like, I've read all these books, I have all these certifications, I have all these degrees, which is who we've given a lot of power to culturally. Mm-hmm. But to me, you are the definition of a true leader, which is somebody who is practicing what they're preaching, and you're in the messy middle. So what do you think the skills that you have learned both in your personal and professional life are, like the actual skills that will quote unquote make you feel successful?
Well, not to take from the name of your podcast, but truly being emotionally uncomfortable, I didn't know was a skill. Like, I didn't really click that together, but I think it's the capacity to say and to own, I still have bad days. I still cry my eyes out. I still scream sometimes. Like, I get angry, I rage. I am a human. I have a lot of emotions, and I feel incapable in moments, just like anybody else. And I think that acknowledging that and accepting it, but not letting it capture you in any sort, like allowing the present moment to come for whatever it is really a skill.
What about problem solving? Like being, it's that, like, yes, problem solving, but instead of reacting, it's like being, I don't want to say proactive instead of reactive. What I'm trying to say is when I get triggered and I'm angry and I'm like, oh, they did it again. Mm-hmm. And I just want to like run and hide and walk away. And I'm like, you can't, Heather. You are your own boss. You have to turn this emotion around and say, how can I? So like that problem solver inside of you.
Yeah. And it's such a big part of tuning into, again, how things make you feel and trusting yourself. And if something doesn't feel good, how can I change this? What do I want instead? Then a lot of it's processing your own and filtering through your own crap. Is this fear or resistance, or is this desire in a different direction? Mm-hmm. And so being able to listen, ask, and trust yourself is a big part of problem solving. I'm an intuitive problem solver. I say all the time, like, I don't know why this is the solution, but it is to me. I just know it. So
I like that.
Yeah. It's like being able to trust, fall, leap. And I think part of it is a bit of relinquishing of fear, because we talk all the time about throwing spaghetti on the wall or whatever it is, and not being attached. And so it's the ability to, okay, this is how I'm going to try to solve the problem. It's an experiment. I'm going along this route, and then I'll rejig it if it's not working based on how I'm feeling.
When So fear versus resistance. I would say that's like one of the top questions I get, because people are like, lean in, feel it, push the edge. Like, how do I know when I'm acting out of fear versus how do I know when I'm acting out of like intuition, like this feels right, but maybe resistance is popping up. And I think that question is very aligned with the work that you do around purpose.
Yeah, I agree. I think that with resistance, there's still this nagging, I don't want to, but I kind of do feeling. It's like, I don't want to, but I know I have to. I want to hide because it's uncomfortable. It's a challenge. It's a stretch. Whereas for me, fear resonates in my body as just no. Nope, not doing that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So when I said that, I was like, well, is it a fear of not doing it, or fear as in it's not in alignment?
I guess
fear and resistance could be the same thing.
Yeah, I think so.
But I guess I did not set you up successfully for that question. And I'm not editing this either. So resistance may manifest itself as fear.
I think a lot. I think it is fear. Yeah, I really do. Because, and that's the whole thing. It's trying to shift that fear to love, right? We hear that all the time. So in the case of resistance, I think it's important to consider, I'm fearful of this, and knowing the stories you tell yourself, I'm fearful of this because, well, in my case, and I'm afraid of being seen. I'm afraid of being rejected. People are going to think I'm crazy. But with still a desire to do it. And so that's when it's resistance versus, like it's still, there's fear that makes you not want to do it.
I always tell people, and you just said that, if you're still thinking about it, like, oh, wouldn't it be nice if, like, oh, I would love to do that. I just don't have the courage, or, oh, I could never, I'm so scared. It's in you. It's a desire. You're just not acknowledging that desire. Cool. But it's interesting to watch people, like, I'm sure you've seen people like this, like friends, where, they're adding a little drama, like might be talking about somebody who's doing something that they want to do. And that person that they're talking about is not even in your consciousness. Like, you're like, who cares? Who cares what she's wearing? Good for her. Cause it's not even somebody that you're like, I don't want to do that. So you're just completely disconnected from it. But yet they're like, oh, it's like, do you want to be a singer? Do you want to be on stage? Like, why are you so fixated on these people? Yeah. Go do that then.
I always say that when we envy or just somebody, it's because it's not just that they have what we want, but we see it part of ourselves in them, or they're acting out something we wish we could.
Yeah.
And so I think it's important sometimes to tune into jealousy and envy, and comparison to some degree has its purpose in that it highlights to you what you might be desiring inside of yourself, but also knowing there's your own unique way of getting there.
Yeah.
You can't copy what someone does.
100%. I've watched and observed myself. I wouldn't say that I'm I'm way over that. Now I see people and I'm like, oh my gosh, how did she do that? And then I'll either like legit just ask her, how did you do that? I want to do that. Like, good job. Cause I'm like, if you can do that, I can do that too. So it's typically in that life enhancing. But if I do catch myself doing like, oh, how did that happen? I'm like, ooh, what is that? Turn that around. But when I did start my work, I was like, I'll never be there. How did she do that? There wasn't a lot of outward projection judgment. It was more of like, I am not worthy of receiving that.
Yeah. And to that point, I think that a lot of people in that position take the route of, well, I'm just not going to look then. I'm going to block them. I'm going to unfollow. I'm going to avoid. It doesn't address the core issue, which is your own self-doubt. Mm-hmm. Right. And so I think that it's a slippery slope sometimes. And it always comes back to, again, the internal work and asking, okay, well, if that's what I want, how can I do that in my own way that feels good? And then why am I feeling so threatened?
Mm-hmm.
by somebody else.
I've had a recent interaction with somebody who was talking about alignment and how, like, relationships. So this, in our Mastery Business program, I talk a lot about partnerships and collaboration, and a lot of shit comes up when people are doing outreach. Mm-hmm. I'm not good enough, fear of rejection. I'm weird in relationships. I don't know how to give value. What if I'm bugging them? Like, all the stuff that comes up. Mm-hmm. Or sometimes there's just a weird mix of energy, and that person might just be busy and you got to hit them up again. But sometimes people are like, that jealousy can come back, right? Like, it could be bounced, or like, oh, I want to do that. I'm like, listen, if it's not in alignment, like, it's not your job to do somebody else's work, right? So if you're just showing up, you're like, hey, I'm putting myself out there. I see value in how I can be of service to your community, and vice versa, how I can give you value. But if they're projecting any stuff onto you and you're like, this is just not aligned, I'm not trying harder to help you overcome your own damn objections, which brings us back to this question of why the nervous system, or this point, the nervous system, and why healing is so, so important in your personal relationships and professional ones.
For sure. Absolutely. Because you'll see it. I mean, I went from myself, not seeing how certain patterns were then impacting my marriage, how I parented, and then working through some of that. And then lo and behold, oh, this is coming up in a conflict with my dad. Okay. Oh, lo and behold, I'm feeling this way when I'm sending emails. It's the same core trigger inside that I feel like we can address sometimes personally, but then I feel like business adds another aspect to it, because again, it brings in now our financial health is on the line. It's invested into that. And it's our brand, our reputation. And I think when you work for yourself, when you are your own brand, and that's not everybody, you're really stepping into another layer and opening yourself up to another layer of inner work, because you are the product service out there. And if you're not stepping into your, power, as you said, and stepping into your true self, you're going to get kind of caught up in all of that, and not like, you'll be dragged down by all of that. So it's not a fulfilling place to be, and it doesn't advance your business.
100%. And then you don't make the impact. And then you're not supporting the people who need you, and the cycle continues, and we self-fulfilling prophecy of why, you are where you are, and women and all of that fun stuff.
Yeah.
I'm like,
and
listen.
Then you say, I never should have done this. And you start that whole regret train, and guilt and shame.
Damn shame.
I know. It's always around.
So Melissa, where can people find you? Where can they get more of you if they're like, I love this woman, I want to hear more about her and what she's up to?
You can visit me online. I'm at melissagiller.com. I have a bunch of resources available there, including a guide on really embodying feminine strengths as leadership traits. I also have a mindset program that I offer for free. You can also follow me on Instagram. I'm at Melissa Giller. I hope to launch a podcast this year myself, the Life with Soul podcast. And I'm currently enrolling both group and one-to-one coaching clients.
Love it. So I always encourage people, after you've listened to this, if you are on Instagram, go send Melissa a private message. You send Melissa, you're at Melissa Giller, Giller.
_Giller. Yeah.
Perfect. So Melissa _Giller, Giller on Instagram, melissagiller.com. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather.
There it is. You just listened to the Emotionally Uncomfortable podcast. If you want to take this conversation to the next level, head on over to our private Facebook group community, heatherchauvin.com/Facebook. My last name is spelled CHAUVIN. That's heatherchauvin.com/Facebook. Also,
if you are a huge fan of this show, please rate and review it on iTunes. Every review helps another woman like you take back control of how she wants to feel and become emotionally uncomfortable. I truly believe the better we feel, the more alive we become. This is how we are going to change the world. And if you've been watching me for a while, if you've been on the fence and you're curious, how can Heather help me? Head on over to heatherchauvin.com/work with me to check out my mastery and mastery business coaching programs. That's heatherchauvin.com/work with me.